When my daughter was born, she had dark skin and looked like her parents could be of African descent. My husband was furious and accused me of cheating and left right then and there. He told everyone on both sides of the family what happened and wanted a divorce. Then his friends and families all called me to say how upset they were and called me really nasty names. My mother was by my side the entire time as I kept professing my innocence. He refused to pick me up from the hospital, threw myself out on the lawn, and changed the locks. When my sister called to get the baby stuff, he texted her a picture of a bare nursery room and said he got rid of everything. He even destroyed my art studio. Eventually, he agreed to do a paternity test, and he was 100% the father. No one could believe this, so we did it again, and he was the dad. One of his cousins did the ancestry thing and found out there was 30% of African in their family. This made Jim's paternal great-grandmother admit to having an affair around the same time Jim's grandfather was born, and because he could pass as hers, she just assumed her husband was the father. Since then, he's been reaching out and everyone has come to apologize. I told him I needed time and he asked to see the baby, and I let him, but I'm too afraid to physically hand her to him. I've never cheated and have been 100% innocent all this time. Am I the asshole for not wanting to give him a second chance?
I literally want to cry. So if you didn't know, I have a sister, and her name's Ashley, and we both have boyfriends. And every night we both fall asleep on the phone with our boyfriends. So one day we're all hanging out and we're like just talking. And my sister's boyfriend looks at me and he's like, "You need to stop going into your sister's room in the middle of the night." And I look at him and I'm like, "What are you talking about? I don't have a reason to go into her room. Like I don't go into her room, especially in the middle of the night." Then my boyfriend hops in the conversation and he's like, No. He's like, "No, I hear Ashley go into Kayla's room every night and stare at her." So me and my sister both look at each other and we're like, we don't go into each other's rooms, do we? And we agreed that we do not. And they said this has been going on for months. So for months, somebody or something has been going into me and my sister's room for about 15 minutes every night and watching us sleep. But it only gets worse.
Story of the time I almost got in a fight over road rage. I know you probably are thinking because of my road rage, but no, sweetie, because of some stupid little girl's road rage. So I was driving on this main road in my area, and it's basically the road that leads to like everything, like the mall, different food places, just basically everything. And if you're from Jersey, then you know that people suck at driving. So the speed limit on this road is about 50, but there's always traffic because everybody goes on that road. And the drivers over here love to cut in front of people. So somebody that was 2 or 3 cars ahead of me decides to weave in front of somebody right before a stoplight. So the first person slams on the brakes, then the second person slams on the brakes, and then I slam on my brakes because I wasn't about to hit somebody. And little miss driving a 2001 Mercedes-Benz decides to honk her horn at me as if it was my fault and pulls up next to me with her windows down. And I'm like, bitch, like, you really think that it would be my fault if you slammed in the back of me? If anything, it's the 2 cars ahead of me's fault, not my fault. So we're at the stoplight next to each other. She starts screaming. Story of the time that I almost got in a fight with a girl over road rage. Part 2. So she pulls up next to me. I obviously assumed it was because she wanted some type of confrontation. So I pulled down my window. And I'm sorry to this girl if you're watching this. I guess you were just like uninformed and you didn't realize that like that whole situation wouldn't have been my fault if you did rear end me. It would be like the 2 cars ahead of me, you know, that like slammed on their brakes in the first place. But it's fine. You live, you learn. So she starts talking about, learn how to drive. You don't know how to drive. Why don't you go back to driving school? You obviously don't deserve your license. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, sis, you're the one that's going to have to go back to driving school when you get those 2 points on your license for rear-ending me. You realize that this accident, if there was an accident, would have been your fault by law. And the stoplight that we were at, of course, had to be the one stoplight that literally you have to wait like 45 seconds to like go green again. We're sitting there just going at it back and forth. And she's like, what's up then? What's up then? What's up then? So trashy. But then the light turned green.
Girls, tell me about a time where your quick thinking probably saved your life. I'll go first. 2 years ago, I was walking my dog at the park and a man approached me and asked to take a picture of her. And I said yes, because why not? It's a picture of a dog. So he starts taking a picture of my dog, and then I realized that he was like holding up her collar, and then it hit me. My address is on that collar. He's not taking a picture of my dog, he's taking a picture of my address. So I told him that I actually didn't feel comfortable with him having a picture of my dog, and I asked him to delete it. So he deletes it and then like starts walking away really fast. And I was like, excuse me, sir, no, could you also go into your deleted album and delete it from there? And he goes, I don't have a deleted album. And I was like, you have an iPhone. Everybody has a deleted album. Could you please delete the picture? And he was like, sorry, I don't have a deleted album. And like keeps walking away. And keep in mind, this is like 2 PM in a park. Like there's other people around. So now I'm like chasing after him and I'm telling him, sir, I know you have the album. I will show you where the album is. Can you please go onto your phone so that we can delete the picture? Oh, part 2. Part two. I'm sorry for the delay. So I'm still chasing after him, and people at the park are like starting to look at us now because I'm chasing after him and I'm telling him to stop walking. And so he stops, and I tell him again to delete the photo from the deleted album, and he goes, "I don't have a deleted album." And I was like, "Yes, you do. Everybody does. It'll take 10 seconds." And he goes, "Fine." And he like goes in his phone, does something for a second. He goes, "There, it's gone." And I was like, "Could I see the deleted album just to make sure it's gone?" And he goes, "No, you can't look at my phone." And I was like, "I don't want to look at your phone. I just want to see the album just to make sure the picture is gone. That's it." And he goes, "No, you're not going to look at my phone." And I was like, "Sir, I'm not going to stop and I'm not going to leave until you show me the album. So please just show me the album so we can be done with this." So he shows me the album. The picture was still there. So I made him delete it in front of my eyes. What if I hadn't noticed that he took a picture of my address? And what if I went home that day and, that night when I took my dog out to pee, he was outside waiting for me? I mean...
Story of the time my family thought I was hungover when I wasn't. So it was Christmas Eve, and my family doesn't celebrate Christmas, so in the past I've gone to friends' houses or boyfriends' houses that I've dated to basically celebrate with their families. But even though we didn't celebrate Christmas the traditional way, we would always go to the movie theaters on Christmas Day. So it was Christmas Eve and I went to my best friend's house at the time, and I had went with her to midnight mass. So we were out pretty late that night. And then when we got back to her house, I'm pretty sure we did each other's makeup or she did my makeup or something, and we were just hanging out watching movies, doing nothing that we weren't supposed to. So the next morning I woke up with really bad period cramps, and when I was a teenager, I was always really scared to ask my friends or ask my friends' parents for medicine or water even. So I called my mom and told her she could pick me up and asked her to bring me a Tylenol and 2 water bottles because I was really thirsty. So my mom comes, I get in the car, and the first thing my sister says to me is, "Oh, you're dehydrated? You need Tylenol? Why's that?" Part 2 is posted already. Go check it out. Link in bio. Story of the time my family thought I was hungover when I wasn't. Part 2. So my family comes to pick me up, and my mom had brought me 2 water bottles and a Tylenol. And right when I get in the car, my sister's like, "Oh, what do you need 2 water bottles for? Why are you dehydrated? You need Tylenol? You have a headache? What's going on?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do have a headache." Only because I was 15 at the time, and talking about my period in front of my dad was just not an ideal situation. Then she was like, "Oh yeah, you were at midnight mass." Imagine my quotation fingers, by the way. And I was like, "Yeah, I actually was at midnight mass." And she starts quizzing me what did you learn about? What was the preacher preaching about? How long were you there? And I was like, "You really think that I was trying to pay attention? I was just there to support my friend because she had to go." So then the entire car ride, we keep going back and forth screaming at each other. And now that I'm telling this story, it wasn't really my family that thought I was hungover. It was kind of just my sister trying to convince my parents that I was, which is literally so annoying. I was so beyond pissed off. I was like, "You know what? I'm just going to wait in the car until the movie's over." But my mom just ended up taking me home.
Tell me you're stupid without actually telling me you're stupid.
I used to have a friend that he didn't have a hand on his left arm, but he always had a watch on that wrist. And one day I asked him, I'm like, "Bro, I wanted to ask you this question a long time ago, but fuck it. Why do you have a watch on that hand? I mean, on that wrist where you don't have a hand? Aren't you afraid it's gonna fall off?" And he's like, "That's kind of a fucked up question, but the reason I have a watch on that wrist is because if I put it on the other wrist, how the fuck am I gonna put it on?" So we're like, "Yeah, it's a fucked up question. Yep, I'm kind of stupid for asking that."
Put a finger down if the guy that cheated on you ended up getting the other girl pregnant. God, I hope this is not something that we can relate on. Well, to provide a little bit of backstory, I met this guy that we'll call Logan at a bar. And while that should have maybe been a red flag, homegirl really thought she met her Prince Charming. He swept me off my feet, we exchanged numbers, and eventually decided to give us a chance. And let me tell you, the first year was a fairy tale. For months, we talked about having a baby, and eventually I ended up getting a positive pregnancy test back. So I was scared, but excited to give this to him. And when I handed it to him, honey, he just went silent. I asked him how he felt, and his response was, "Like I need to pee." Later on, I begged this man to propose to me because we were having a baby together, and he proposed to me with the cheapest turn your finger green ring. And I know these are fat red flags, but at the time, I just saw them as pink because I was giving birth to our son. Well, the second it was time to give birth to him, my fiance wasn't involved at all, to the point where the nurses were asking if the dad was in the picture. I was straight up alone. But now pay attention. One female friend that went on double dates with us often, named Tori, came up with my husband to check on me. Part 2 to my ex cheating on me and getting the other girl pregnant. So a little backstory on this girl, Tori. I knew her because we had gone on double dates with her and her husband before. I had been to her house multiple times. She was also pregnant, and I was super, super excited for her. Logan always encouraged a relationship between us. Because we could both relate on being pregnant, we talked almost every single day until the end of my pregnancy. Logan and Tori talked every day, multiple times a day. But again, I just saw this as a pink flag. He would go visit her during lunch breaks all the time, but because she was married, I really didn't think it was a big deal. And I trusted Logan, right? So anyways, he ended up bringing her to the room, where she held my brand new baby in her arms and met my parents. I was also touching her baby bump and was super excited for her. Well, when it was time for her to leave, Logan walked her out. And they were gone for about an hour. But still, I didn't think anything of it. However, a few months later, I ended up getting a Facebook friend request from Tori's husband. However, I don't really check my Facebook very often, so it took me weeks to realize that he had requested me and sent me a message. And it said, "Let me know if you want to know how badly your fiance is cheating on you with my wife." Part 3 to my boyfriend cheating on me and getting the other girl pregnant. So after Tori's husband sent me this message, I still couldn't believe it. I thought it was just a joke until I looked at Logan and said, "Hey, Tori's husband texted me." As soon as I said that, his face dropped and he stopped talking, which solidified my fear, and my husband admitted to everything. I dropped my phone and just cried. Like, how many times had he left to go help her while I stayed at home pregnant? The amount of times he went to go visit her at lunch, and he even admitted that the baby that Tori was pregnant with was his. I ended up finding out that their relationship had been going on for 3 years, which was before she was even married to her husband and before Logan and I got together. And when we broke up, he ended up proposing to Tori with a much nicer ring. But ultimately, when she had the baby, he just abandoned that baby too. And to this day, he has not seen that baby and still refuses to see my son. I even tried to suggest a healthy co-parenting relationship between the 4 of us, and he couldn't even seem to do that. Tori and her husband ended up getting back together, and she's tried to reach out multiple times to apologize, but it just really doesn't make up for what she did.